Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly conclave. And today's conclave is a very important topic and one that can help to bring you into a higher state of awareness around the best choice to make for yourself when seeking out and approaching 5-MeO DMT experiences. And so the topic of today's conversation is low versus high dose 5-MeO DMT. And what does that mean? How can these different approaches help you transform and deepen into accomplishing the things that you desire? So, just go over a little housekeeping before we begin. This is going to be about a 30-minute presentation, and it will cover some details around high dose, low dose, different risks associated with that, and support as needed. And so, really thank you so much for being here today and consuming this important content. We are always creating as much educational content awareness around safety, harm reduction, expansion, experience, and wanting to always send you what is best so you can be prepared to expand on your journey. And every month we offer a guided community meditation ceremony where we are offering the experience to work with the light wand and sometimes the unity mist in a setting where we're guiding you through different practices, often including Kundalini yoga, breath work, and other activating practices, and accompanied by uh, the meditation part, which is typically light wand and or unity mist, and that can help give you some experience to guide your own ceremonies should you decide to follow this path on your own and continue to expand and grow outside of this container. So, again, thank you so much for joining. And we look forward to always being able to serve you however we can. So, with that being said, the purpose. We're going to talk a little today about high doses and low doses of 5-MeO and how those work within our body and within our practice and which can be best for us. And this information will give you that choice. So, how was, first of all, historically, as you can see across a myriad of platforms and information that's being shared, uh, Bufo or 5-MeO DMT, which is what is within the Bufo exudate, is also coined the God molecule, and it's coined this because it can elucidate a profound connection to all things, all beings, which one would say that's God. And so it doesn't make you God, but it connects you to the essence of God. And so um, typically, the approach has always been a full release or full experience dose, which is, in other medicines, maybe a flood dose, you'd call it. So that is intended to elucidate a complete dissolution of self, of the frameworks of identity, of structure, and give us the ability to experience life as if it were from a non-dual perspective of being connected to everything. And while this is a beautiful experience, it's often it's often, I don't want to say marred, but it's often uh, compounded with the need for deep integration support because what it can do is completely shift the person that you see yourself as. And without support and guidance afterwards, one can get lost in the sauce, so to speak. So, in doing this, I am a little about myself. If you don't already know, I've been practicing with um, 5-MeO DMT in ceremonial settings since 2020, and I spent about 9 months shadowing someone almost every week, like every few weeks, and in ceremony with veterans and other individuals to learn how to apply the medicine, to learn the energetics, the safety, everything that was involved before I ever touched the device to serve medicine. And while I was going through that, I was doing some work on myself in different dosing strategies and learned a lot about the energetics of 5-MeO-DMT in the body, in the soma. And so, in doing this, finally, towards the end of 2020, I began serving veterans on my own, in my own capacity, and through that, developed a series of protocols to approach how the medicine is served. And then for the few years following that, I started integrating a low dose introduction before the deep dive experience with the Bufo. So the way it would look is people would arrive and get grounded, get set, and then we would begin by doing some slight movement practices, just get the body loose. I drop them into a little bit of breath work. And then we would go into the low dose approach. So we would use a what has been coined a light wand, and that's what we coined it here in our church. And also, um, it was not invented by us, but we have adopted the technology. And thank you to the founders, inventors of this amazing, important device. We were using this to introduce people to get their bodies in relaxation. Oftentimes, when people are showing up for Bufo, they are experiencing anxiety or some stressors because the unknown, right? And so, giving them a gentle introduction uh, proved to be very useful in the relaxation and the approach to the deep dive experience. So, we would go for about 30 minutes to an hour of just applying light doses and self guided as well of the medicine. So, people would be getting between 4 and 6 milligrams of 5-MeO DMT, the pure molecule, uh, every 15 minutes or so through the experience to get them into a nice softened state. And then when they were ready, we would come over and we would serve them a deep dive of Bufo. And what this would do is because they're already at ease, it would allow them to expand more rapidly without as much tension. And oftentimes with Bufo, there's a lot of tension released. And so it can present itself as movement, as yelling, as talking conversations. Anything that's needing to be unwound is unwound there. But with the light dosing to begin with, it allows that to naturally soften, and there's less of that swing in the deep depths of the medicine. And so, in doing this over time, we started to figure out that what if we separated these two experiences completely and allowed them to be married in our guided sessions, but also we pulled off the light low dose and started to figure out how we can enable people to have their own guided experiences and be their own healer. And at the essence of it, at the base of it, my personal belief and the belief of my community that I trained through is that we are our own innate healer. Within us is an innate wisdom that, once unlocked, allows us to be the guardians, the guides, the keepers of our own wellness and joy. And so, as we unfolded that experience, it became very apparent to us that this was vital. That we got this type of approach to the population. And so, obviously, you see what was born from that is the inclusion of the 5-MeO DMT sacrament into our church and into our practices. And I began to do specific guided low dose meditations for individuals in their own ceremonies, and found so much use in the somatic release, the somatic tension release that comes with that medicine. So, um, I say all that to say that this is sort of the creation of where these protocols came from, and then you can do enough research to understand the high dose 5-MeO DMT or Bufo experiences are very powerful and potent. But oftentimes there's a lot of refractory that comes along with that. Just like anything in a pendulum, you swing it really far this way, it's going to come back. So there's some preparation that's involved, and so I'll get into a little bit of the what's expected of uh, these different approaches, and some safety stuff, and how to properly show up for this. So first I'll talk a little more about the high dose experience. So with the high dose Bufo experience, and some practitioners use synthetic or the pure molecule as they call it, or it's been coined the Jaguar. And with a high dose experience, you are essentially turning off your waking state and going completely into a state of non-dual awareness. And what is there is it's everything. And without without contextual preparation or knowing what it's like, it's like it can be really huge, and beautiful. Imagine being connected to the all, right, to everything. And if you are in our school community or have worked with 5-MeO DMT, even in a low dose way, you can imagine what it would be like on the other side of that. And so, um, yeah, so approaching that ceremony, quite a bit of preparation needs to go into that. And what I mean by that is, well, when you go into complete reset mode and then you come back to Earth, you catch yourself. So your all of your habits, all of your behaviors, all of your choices, all of your life still exists as it was. And our spirit can go and transform and become this omnipotent, infinite, universal being, but it still has to come back into the 3D world. And when that happens, if there hasn't been enough preparation that's been laid out, it can create tension in the body and in the system, because you have these two different perspectives that you now have. You have this expansive, I can do anything, I'm everything, I can accomplish anything. And then you're like, well, but I haven't. I have my own body here. I have my own habits. I have my own story. And so connecting the two and getting from that state of where you were to what you see as your potential, that's part of the practice of integration. And I think it's so important, though, to be prepared for that first, and not just to show up and go like, well, I'm going to figure it out on the back end. We always want to be fully present for the experience, but also when we're prepared, we can go deeper, we can go into a more potent transformational process. And so, what sort of approaches are needed afterwards is, a pretty robust, I believe, a pretty robust integration period. And if you have, for me, if you don't have an integration coach per se, a deepened philosophy approach in philosophy, or um, religious practices, things like that can help become, or can help integrate the who am I, or what am I supposed to be doing here. So for me personally, I dropped into learning about Bushido, and learning about samurai approach, Zen, Buddhist practices, because these are practices that help teach our bodies to activate and to move and to be a participatory element in our experience. And so often in the Western world, we are dropping always into intellect. Like, let's hyper intellectualize things and figure them out, and then approach life. And in the Eastern, Far East, there's a different approach, which is like, just start activating and moving the body in these specific ways, and then the intellect can follow. And so, there's no one way to skin the cat, but I'm a very, very firm believer that activating the body after a full release experience will help integrate what the experience has shown. Because as we know, the body activates the mind. It's not the other way around. So let's just always be like in awareness of that. That if we want to approach these big doses in the highest and best, we must activate the body. We must activate the body, and this is why in our experiences we do Kundalini yoga, we do breath work, because we're actually moving the energy through the body. Um, and so and also, let's just go a little bit of risk. We'll say a little risk harm reduction conversation around the high dose. So with the high dose experience, there is always a risk of aspiration and an injury. And because when you turn off you turn consciousness completely offline, the body tends to want to unwind the tension that's built into the system, and that can look like uh, a myriad of different things. So I've had uh, people who I've been supporting through ceremony, get up, walk around, pound their fist, yell, point, scream, roll around, um, and then those are just like physical injury risks. And then the highest and most risky element here is the potential for aspiration. So aspiration, if you don't know, is a blockage of the airway. And so, what people will do sometimes they'll be laying in a shavasana after being served, and they'll start to uh, build up liquid and phlegm in their passageway. And people who I'm sitting with are completely fasted, and the recommendation here is to always be fasted. And I mean, with Bufo, 6 8 hours, like really fasted. And everyone has their own opinions, but if you're fasted and you have abstained from drinking lots of water within an hour before ceremony, typically the purge is going to be energetic and then some spittle, but the risk of aspiration is much much lower. But I've seen people who they are in resistance. They're like, well, I need to eat, I need to do all these things, and you know it's it's not recommended. And if you've eaten, a few hours prior to ceremony, I won't facilitate that experience. It's just too dangerous, and it creates a lot of, I think it can create more trauma in the body. And so, however, that being said, being fasted is going to prevent aspiration from happening. So just be aware if you're working with other people that they are planning those safety protocols, because typically when you aspirate or when there's vomit coming, you just get rolled onto your side and allow things to come out. Your body's got, again, this is innate wisdom to get things out. And we have this resistance in our human Western world experience that like vomiting, purging is a bad thing. And when in reality, it's not, right? All animals do it. Animals walk around, eat grass and other things to get things out of them. We just have some meanings behind it as a human being. So if we can erase the meanings and realize that purging is actually getting things out, stuck energy, stuck food, poisons, toxins, then we would approach it with open eyes, open heart, open mind. So uh, yeah, and then of course with the high dose, there's a big refractory period as we talked about in the beginning. So there is a period that is like, whoa, everything is new and fresh and beautiful and amazing. And that feels great. That's the afterglow. However, life becomes real as we move forward from that experience. And you start to realize that some of the things that you want in your life, maybe you don't have yet, or you haven't created the life or structure that is best for you because you've seen this other side. And so there can be some, how do I say this? There just can be some differentiation between what you want and what you have. And so this is part of like getting into this integration practice of realizing that we're always growing as human beings and we're always going towards something. And it doesn't have to be something of high pressure, but we're just moving in a direction and a path, allowing our energy to continue in motion. And so, and there's tons of stuff I can say about the integration process and activating the body and the energy body after ceremony, which we can go into in subsequent videos. Just wanting to stay really concise around the medicine this time. And then the alternate perspective is what we're talking about is low dose 5-MeO. And so, what is that? So, low dose 5-MeO DMT is a low meditative dose where you stay in an embodied experience, but allow your mind and consciousness to be in an expanded awareness. So if you've seen the memes that are going around, which show the body standing, like a body of a person standing, and then like from here up, it looks like the universe, right? It's like this is like a cloud, and then whew, expansion. And so being in the low dose experience enables one to be in that state of embodiment, also expanded connection. So What this does is it allows us to be actively processing and moving through different focuses or focus points in our awareness that we want to work on. And this is where intentionality is very important. Whereas the high dose, you're going offline. So your intention, while is important, can often be forgotten by your subconscious, because who is our intention created by? Our conscious waking awareness, what we think we need intellectually. But what we really need, perhaps, is something much deeper. And in these low dose experiences, we still stay partly connected to our intellect. So if we have a challenge we want to work on, we can bring that into focus and be in that energy, focused energy, for an extended period of time and actually widen our view. So allows us to see the challenge or to see the path without our human form attached to it. Because what we find in real life is we have these desires, these wishes for ourselves, and oftentimes we create limitations because it's based on what we believe about ourselves. Like, I want to fly, like, but I don't have wings. And we start to hyper intellectualize that. Well, what does that mean? I don't have wings, but we don't realize that if we zoom way out and see this from a meta point of view, that we can see that all of these things have been solved already. We have jetpacks, we have airplanes, we have gliders, we have other things that can help us to accomplish those things. But when we always look at the lens of ourself, it may be more challenging to get to those places. So and this is just one specific, obviously, metaphor, but with anything, with challenges, with emotional challenges, you get to be embodied and allow yourself to work through it in an expansive way. So it's really, really amazing. And the preparation for a low dose experience is a little more easeful. I always recommend, though, being fasted, whereas some practitioners will say, like, well, 2 hours of fasting before it, it's fine. And my true belief is, well, and backed by evidence, is that 5-MeO, it elucidates in the physiology of our body the rest digest cycle. So it activates our parasympathetic nervous system. And what that does is it wants to help us move energy. And what it starts with is what we're consuming. So any media, any food, any people that you've consumed recently, and obviously you're not eating people, maybe you are, but hope not. But their energy has to be digested and processed before you can get into your own experience. And this includes food, primarily food. So if you have food in your gut, your upper intestine, in your stomach, your body wants to move that out of there so it can heal, right? They say if you go to bed full, you won't heal. If you go to bed hungry or fasted, your body gets time to heal, because it heals when it's empty, not when it's full. So going into these low dose experiences, or high dose, but specifically here, low dose experiences with an empty gut, will enable you to go deeper and to get uh, real physiological benefits, not just spiritual benefits or emotional benefits. Your body will actually start to heal itself, starts to come back into balance. And, with that, it gives us a way to feel comfortable being empty, which can help us to integrate that into our life, right? We don't always have to be filled with food and always consuming things. It's good to be in emptiness, right? Because that gives us the lens by which to see the unlimited potential of our life. And with the low dose, there's this a much lower refractory period, right? Because you are in a constant state of processing. So you're sort of still in awareness. And then you can expand out your consciousness and go to a place of limitless possibility while still staying embodied with your intention, your challenge in front of you. Start to integrate that experience live in real time. And then when you come back, you can feel activated, feel ready to move and integrate the story, the solutions into your practice. And there's less of a, oh my God, what am I? Oh my God, like being a brand new person all over again, being born again. There's less of that. Not that that's not useful, but it's just a different approach. So this is something like the low dose approach is something that you can integrate into your regular programming, like weekly or monthly, whatever you need to help you along your path to feel like you are your highest and best self and not carrying around the energy, the densities of other people. So, and then with the two different approaches, there are obviously different delivery methods. So, with a deep dive approach, we typically use um, a an oil burner, which is classically called an oil burner. There's a company called Eclipse, which makes a nice, beautiful metal device. I use a all glass wand that uses an Eclipse adapter. I'll show you this wand here if you can see it. Oh, I don't know if the camera's working good. Virtual background. So anyway, this is the glass device I use. And so here you'll see this tip has the oil cartridge, vape cartridge. So this gets filled with medicine and then torched. And so that practice, you can vaporize a lot of medicine and take it in rapidly and go to a full dissolution, dissolved state. And then with the low dose, as you know, being a member here, we have the light wand, which allows you to selectively dose as you wish, as it feels good to you and works with your system. And then also we have guided meditations that take you through a specific dosing protocol. And then we have the Unity Mist, where you can dose sort of as frequently as you desire with 2 milligrams per application. And that allows you to be in this like lower curve, longer period of time in the experience. But again, it's a low dose. So more of as a microdose. And we see there's benefits for microdosing, macrodosing, and then full release dosing. And so in each of these approaches has different benefits and effects. And what I would totally recommend is if you have experienced exceedingly high amounts of trauma or suffering in your life, working with a low dose medicine can be very helpful. However, with a caveat to, I would recommend to have support with, because what it can do is bring up some of these like really heavier densities to the surface. And something very helpful is to have someone to have a conversation to help move that energy out. If you're doing it by yourself, it can become challenging. This is why we have our school page here and other ways to contact and get a hold of us, so we can be supportive of that as well. And then, with the deep dives experience, it's really a must. You really, really should have someone there to support you in the experience, because again, as I spoke in the beginning of this, there's risks involved with being completely, I don't want to say unconscious, but I want to say completely in another consciousness where the body is really running the show, but there's no sensory data getting applied. So your visual cortex is offline, your hearing is mostly offline, your sense of smell actually is still kind of functioning, but there's nothing being recorded. So there's some studies that have been talking about what 5-MeO does in the brain. And at a flood dose, it turns off your brain's ability to learn or retain information. So things are just kind of flowing in and out, in and out, in and out, which is great to be in the presence of experience. But what that does is it doesn't enable us to be our own safeguard. So we must have someone else present in these deep dive experiences. And one caution or caveat to the light wand especially is that you can titrate up to the deep dive dose. With that being said, though, when you are titrating up slowly, I call it like going up the spiral staircase to heaven, you're shedding somatic tension as you rise, right? So going into that experience, when you get to that highest level, there's not much tension left in the body. So you're able to go into a full release and be more in shavasana or be in a relaxed state. I mean, sometimes you may go over on the side and be in a fetal position, which is actually what they say is like the birth position, right? You go shavasana, it's like you're surrendering. And then when the rebirth happens, you go into fetal position. This is why in yoga, we go through both poses, right? Because we're going to be reborn after the experience. And so, with that being said, if you're going to work with these alone outside of a ceremonial setting or outside of connected to us through our ceremonies, contact some trip support. So the Fireside has a trip check-in service where you can register and ask them to call and check in on you. So if you're doing a low five experience on your own, you can say, hey, Fireside, check in on me at this time. And they'll call you and check you. And it's really, really amazing to have that type of support if you want to be working with these medicines um, at your own account. So outside of that, we we always want to provide as much support as possible here at the church, and so we have these these different walls here on the school group that you can post questions and answers, and we also offer one-off or small group ceremonies, Cynthia and myself here in Dallas or in other places where where we can travel as well. So to close, thank you so much for joining and receiving this information. And you can always check back in on this and reference this and other conclaves to help deepen your practice along the way. Um, Upcoming this Sunday is our light wand meditation. It's April 26th. And we'd love to have you there. The registration is low-5.com/Jaguar. And you're always welcome here. And if you need any support or anything, please message me right on the wall, message Cynthia. Yeah. And thank you so much for tuning in, and y'all have a rad rest of your day.